Hi there, I am Adem Kirvas. We are here in Ordu, Turkey, a small town in the Black Sea region. I'm here in my hometown and in my parents' home. We are still in the pandemic and we're still talking about hate. Today will be the final episode on hate. This does not mean that I think that we have reached our goal. Not at all. Hate is indeed a very interesting emotion and it deserves a lot of attention. However, but today I think we will some sort of make a break of philosophical inquiries. I announced that I want to try something out, especially audio books with a new approach on how to record novels, fiction in a way. I do everything with my phone. I don't have a laptop. So, however, I always wanted to make audio books, and this will be one chance. I have enough space on podcast, so sufficient enough to try to make this attempt. However, but we will. I still wanna inquire emotions, and I always, and we talked about this desire. Desire is one of those very interesting emotions, especially with the LGBTQ community, and of course as well as hate, because we are in a society, we are in with a lot of racism, with a lot of hate. I would not say racism is of course something which needs a special consideration. Nevertheless, so hate is a very powerful emotion. Hate is one of those things we still live. And of course, I will use this episode as well as partially as a summary as well. So we went through those episodes, or through those explanations, especially with hate as being subjective. We talked about this. If you prefer the psychoanalysis term, then we came up with worked through definitions which we found on Google and Merriam-Webster, and now here we are, and we talked about the last time about antagonism. And of course, as well as fear, this is something we have to add up it, because if you being socially outcast, this is one of the driving forces. If you're a social outcast, if you cannot compete in a society for resources which are considered as valuable, and that the gathering and garnering of those resources are considered as well worthy, as well as are telling about you. If, of course, in our society, no matter in which fringe you live, whether you are in the center or just in the periphery, you wanna be successful. You wanna accomplish something. But of course, this is something we have to. This is something we only wanna talk about briefly, but there is some sort of a feeling and emotion inside you to create something. This is, you would assume, some sort of mysterious feeling, emotion. Freud some sort of gave it some mysterious connotation with creating something, survival and so on, but you have in yourself an innate desire, or partially desire, to create something, and especially something that lasts, because this is what funerals are for, this is what gravestones are for, because your loved ones will remember you eventually. Those gravestones, they are rather for eternity, for further generations, or for future generations who might know that one day some person existed. Of course, this person then exists in a way through narration and stories of other people. However, especially if you lose a lost one or a loved one, if you lose a person in your family, then of course you want something that outlasts. However, so this is indeed something which we humans aspire to, and or if you want a legacy is the more better when you accomplish something successfully. We briefly talked about parents considering their children as an extension of themselves. So what they do not accomplish, they want their children to accomplish, and so on and so forth. Of course, then we talked about one important issue, and this is what is happening actually when you are excluded from this, and this is of course something which is fearful as well, because you are part of, in a way, you are considered as an outcast. You consider, or you create a counter culture or in a way invert all those values to make it very positive, especially those body positive pics or those philosophy approach, how you want to see it. This is an inversion of values. So obesity is not bad anymore. It makes you more human, more hard, or it is rather about makes you more nice, if you want more human, down to earth, the girl next door, the boy next door, understanding, not superficial, not shallow. But however, this always comes with a fear that you are not being accepted, that you are some sort of outcast, or that you live in the periphery of a society, because this is something you have. So this means that you have always in your counter culture an ambiguity. This is especially if you are a migrant. This is I know this as a Turkish migrant. I mean, you always see yourself through the eyes of the host society. I grew up in a society which has, at least those whom I met, those people whom I met, had mostly only derision to Middle Eastern culture. They thought Middle Eastern culture is inferior, whatever it is. And then, of course, but the explanation is that the Middle Eastern culture is inferior because the Middle Eastern people are inferior genetically, and so on. So this is the argumentation. This is what I always encountered, and this, of course, leads to you a perception of yourself. This is something you do not swipe away. This is part of your identity. It is part of your ambiguous identity, and of course you fear being this dumb Middle Eastern man. You fear that you some sort of fulfill people's prejudices, and that you then some sort of never get appreciation for your wits, for what you have accomplished, and so on. So no matter what you do, even though if you invert your values, for example, even though if you put yourself on a more moral pedestal, there are of course always temptations. I mean, we have to be aware of one thing. I mean, temptations, or only an object becomes a temptation if you try with force whatever you have to bar yourself from it. However, but if you put yourself on a moral pedestal, like you want to be a righteous Muslim, whatever, and this would then mean that you must not eat pork, that you must not drink alcohol, or that you behave in a way decent, because this is what you say, or this is what we in Austria, among the Middle Eastern community, in a way always told ourselves, that we would be decent, honorable, and so on. And we would not lie, cheat. But of course, this puts a lot of high standards on you, and this is indeed very difficult to sometimes accomplish these. And then you, of course, have a fear that you do not accomplish, or that you are not pious enough in order to get recognition, because this is what we talked about as well. I mean, you are still competing for resources, and one of the resources in society is acknowledgement. This is what you get in social media. So despite the fact social media is a virtual reality, nevertheless it is interconnected with society. So those mechanisms which you have in society or on social media, these you will find in society as well, because otherwise it would not work. Otherwise, Instagram would be the name of a online video game, whatever. So it has a connection to real life, and but with the difference that on social media you get very fast recognition, whereas on real life, for example, if you live in rural area, there it is. I mean, of course, you have to be aware of one thing, that there are a lot of mechanisms, especially if you live in a human community where everyone knows each other. I mean, you cannot just recognize everyone for his or her accomplishment, because there are a lot of mechanisms. There's a lot of envy, especially if you know someone. I mean, it is easier to acknowledge and recognize someone's accomplishments whom you do not know than someone with whom you probably even grew up with, and of whom you assume he's not smarter than you or whatever, or someone with whom you grew up with and you then detest because for something happened in your childhood with this person, or this was the dumb boy or girl you grew up with, and everyone thought he or she's an idiot, and then it turns out it's not the case, and you still cannot really believe it. However, but there is a lot of mechanism goes on, and this has, of course, something valuable, and then of course you fear that you being some sort of outcast, or if you want women. I mean, if you are this is still in our society very common. If you are a woman who seeks sexual pleasure with many men, and I don't mean cheating, I really mean sexual pleasure in normal relationships without cheating. However, this has been frowned on, or at least you will be considered as a whore. So this is indeed a very big issue, and of course you don't want to be outcast. You don't want to be derived of these social interactions which you might need. I mean, this is not very nice, and I know this from my own experiences, especially in the university. I mean, if you are being out, or if you are an outcast for whatever reason, I mean, in my case, this was point blank racism. I mean, if you are being outcasted there, then this is really nasty. I mean, if you sit in those classrooms, people talk literally not behind your back anymore. They just talk past you. This is pretty much nasty. I even sat in a classroom where people in front of me were discussing how and when they should kill me. I mean, this is indeed very hideous. I mean, one reason, I mean, I have talked about it over and over again, my deep hate and this disdain for the Austrian culture, for everything that's Austrian. I mean, it would not be of use if we would talk about this over and over again, but this is indeed a fact. So this can be pretty much nasty. However, but if we want to stay with this, I mean, this is, of course, if you see this in the rap videos, I talked about rap videos because I think rap videos, especially with hip hop and so on, after they in a way are the front runners of a subculture, of a counter culture which has inverted the values. So as a fuck or gangster, you are not considered despicable anymore as it would be considered in a society by white people, but rather you are again laborers. You have accomplished something. You are tough, you are manly, you did not grow up in privileges, and yet you still made it work, and yet